Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brian Berneman's little workshop tonight, lockdown edition, called Rewriting Our Story. I will let him introduce himself, but have a great time. And any questions you've got, go into the chat, and we will do our best to answer them throughout. Welcome, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me here. A lot of times it's hard to know where to start because it's based on who I'm talking to, and I usually just fill the room, and it's a little bit more challenging online. But anyways, what we are here to talk about is rewriting our story. And this is a topic that I feel like now actually we all have a lot more time. We might be working, but this is an amazing time to be able to actually do that. And just a little bit about me so that you know where I'm coming from, where I'm talking, and the perspectives that I'm talking from. So I'm originally from Argentina, and hence my accent. So if you don't understand something, just write it, ask me to repeat it. But I grew up in a family that I would say quite conscious parents, but it wasn't until I was a teenager that my parents really started their spiritual journey, and then I went with them basically. And I started getting a lot of teachings from different meditation techniques and from yoga and Buddhism and a lot of energy healing. And one day my parents invited me to go to this Tibetan yoga class, and I just fell in love with the practice. And it was one of the things that since then I was a teenager, I've done every single day. One of the biggest things that was a life changer for me was that now it was 9 years ago, I decided to live the life that I knew. So I left, I was living in different parts of the world. I lived for a while in New York, for a while in Miami, then I was living in Germany. And I remember that I was practicing and I wanted something different. So I messaged my teacher from Argentina and I asked her about this retreat center in California. That is the main place where they teach this. And I asked her if she thought that was a good place for me. And she's like, yes, but it's really different. Like, you're living in the middle of a mountain. It's like, I've only been living in big cities my entire life. I didn't know anything other than that. But anyways, I messaged them, and 2 weeks later I was living in a retreat center, in a Tibetan Buddhist retreat center, and everything was different. It was in the middle of a mountain, full of nature, practicing and working hard every single day. And the biggest thing was working on me. So I went there because I wanted to actually understand more about me. Like, I went there for just for me. And then suddenly with time, everything that I learned there has been what I've used for work and how I help people. But nothing that I learned was for that purpose. Nothing that I learned was to actually go and help people. It was all selfish. It was all for me. It was also that I could understand myself and understand why I did the things that I did. How am I doing the things that I'm doing? Getting a lot of very different perspectives. This is something that I feel like having that openness to that change and to that which is different has been one of the biggest tools that I've been able to learn. And that was a little bit of my path. And since then, now I've been living here in Auckland for the last 5 years. I've been just sharing this. I've been working, helping people, and creating events and gatherings and connecting with awesome people like all of you here. And I just share what I have learned. Everything that I shared is based on my experience. I try not to share anything that I haven't actually experienced myself. So we are now in an amazing time. There's this huge shift that is happening. And from a spiritual perspective, we've been on this shift now for almost a decade, I would say. And there's a lot of people that started like with this 2012 thing of the Mayans, and that same energy is the same energy that we are having now. And there has been a huge shift energetically, but also now we're seeing that shift on a very solid and physical reality. So we are in this moment that I believe that it's a wake-up call. This is as far as what we know, it's like for the entire society. And how do we choose to engage with what is coming and what it is up to us. So a lot of times I'm talking with people and I'm telling them, like, this is an amazing opportunity. How will the world look after this? And for me, it's how we create it. It's not about waiting for something to happen. It's about actually doing it. And it's the same for us. So now, like, most of us have the opportunity and the time to be able to do that. Most of us have the time to be able to sit at home and perhaps reevaluate things, do things differently. And this is what I want to actually create this space from. So when was the last time that we had this opportunity in our lives? Even the ones that we are working a lot, like, when did we have the opportunity to actually be at home with our families or with ourselves and take the time to do that? Because now we don't have to commute, we don't have to go to any like physical events, there's no like transportation that we need to go anywhere. So we have a lot of time. So what are we doing with that time? I believe that this is the time for us to connect deeper and to understand if I am living the life that I want to be living. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to actually get a response here because everyone is muted, but are you living the life that you want to be living? Like, that is one of the biggest things that I invite you to ask yourself. Are you living the life that you want to be living? Awesome, Amy. Yes, I love that. Some of us are living the life that we want. Yes, Sarah. Some of us are not living the life that we want. So, nothing wrong with not living the life that we want. This is why we're here. This is why this moment actually is what matters. I always find that my biggest teacher is my inner world. My inner world, which I talk about it a lot in terms of feelings. So for me, one of the biggest foundations of life is understanding that world of feelings. And if I understand that, then I can change a lot. So I remember this was back in 2008, I finished my postgrad in neuroscience. And I actually studied neuroscience because I wanted to understand how to logically talk to my brother, because he didn't believe the things that I was talking about. he didn't believe in meditation. He thought that when I was talking about Reiki and energy healing, I was like a little bit woo-woo and crazy. So now, like, and after that, he meditates and he does all of these things. He calls it mindfulness. He doesn't meditate. He practices mindfulness. But I, like, all the time, like I told him, it doesn't matter what's the word. What matters is the experience within. So when we understand how our inner world works, we can bring that out. So a lot of the things that I do and that we're going to go through here are questions that not necessarily we are going to get an answer now. So when we are actually doing work on questioning to create a change, the most important thing that we're going to do is that we're going to go inside and get the feeling that comes from the question. So do any of you know when your body is telling you a hell yes and when it's a hell no? Like when you have to do something and your body is like, yes. Like that, if you know that feeling, it's easier to actually create the life that we want. When we don't have the tools to do that, it's a little bit more challenging. So when we are going to talk with some questions, the main thing that I invite you to do is to feel what comes up from that question. It's not an answer that I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is a feeling. So if we don't understand how to feel, this is a little bit more challenging. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do for a moment to understand a little bit what a feeling is and how to connect with that, we're going to take just a few moments to drop into feelings. So I'm going to invite all of you for a moment to close your eyes. And we're going to take a few deep exhales. And as we exhale, I'm going to invite you to let go of whatever came before. Let go of the past. So whatever came before, it's already gone. So allowing that to stay in the past. Keep on exhaling. Allowing whatever needs to happen afterwards to stay in the future, because that's not here yet. So letting go of the past, letting go of the future, letting go of any worries, any stress that we might be experiencing. I invite you to give yourself the permission to be here, now, in your body. Allowing your breath to find a more natural rhythm. And I invite you to go in and to notice, how does your inner landscape look like at this moment? Try not to judge it, try not to label it, just noticing. Noticing any feelings and sensations. Noticing where in your body are you having any feelings or sensations. And the more that we can stay connected with the feelings and not with the words, not with the naming and the labels of it, the more that we understand the world of feelings. So feel free to stay there for a moment or feel free to come back. The world of feelings is the world of energy. When I experience feelings, what I'm experiencing is energy moving. So if there's energy moving, there's a feeling. If there's no energy moving, there's no feelings. And how I'm experiencing those feelings is with my body, not with my mind. So what we tend to do is that we tend to think our feelings instead of feeling our feelings. And there's a huge difference there. Even when I'm talking about emotions and when with a lot of the yogic practices talk about emotions, for me, emotions are still thoughts, are still labels from the mind, from the feeling. The feeling is the first experience. So that is what I want for us to focus on when we're doing any type of work that actually requires change. Because when we try to work with the mind, it's super challenging because the mind only knows what it knows. It doesn't know what is outside of it. But I can create the change here by changing something in here. By understanding more of my body and understanding more the feeling world, I can change that. So, understanding that, are you living the life that you want to live? Are you living the life that you're wanting to live? It doesn't have to come up with an answer. Most importantly, a feeling. So when we know and we start getting more attuned to that, that is going to help us. So how many of you know what's your purpose in life? I'm going to try and see. Do you know what your purpose is? If you don't know, perfectly okay. Not all of us know our purpose. I need to show people hope. Nice. We don't all know our purpose. That's perfectly okay. Because I always tell people, everyone is still figuring life out. Even until the last day, everyone is still figuring it out. Where the pressure to know is coming, I don't know. It's coming from society, I know. It's coming from that conditioning that we have. But where is it coming for each of us? Do we understand where are we going? Like, where are you going? Where are you trying to get? And super important to understand that where I'm trying to go might not be where I need to go. So always reminding myself to stay open. Because, for example, when I was living in California in the Tibetan Buddhist Retreat Center, I was planning on staying there. And then one day, my visa renewal came back denied, and I had to leave from one day to the next, and I had to change my entire life. And I was okay with it. So when we remain open, we are able to actually go with the flow of life. If I am not open, if I think, this is supposed to be this way, or this is supposed to be that way, then I am contracting. I am not able to actually flow with life. So if you don't know what your purpose is, that's perfectly okay. What you might know is, what do you stand for? And that will tell you some of what your purpose is and where are you going. what are the things that you stand for? And if you know what are the things that you stand for, why do you stand for that? Who gave you those values? Are those values yours, or are those values someone else's values? And have you stopped and actually think about your values and think, is this something that I care about? This is an exercise that I recommend everyone to do. We're not going to have the time now because I believe that it's a very important practice, but I'm going to invite you tomorrow to put a piece of paper in front of you and to start writing your values. And if you don't know, go to Google and put values and start writing all of those words that actually resonate with you. When you do that, after you do that, go through each of the ones that you actually written down on your piece of paper and take a moment to feel into them and to feel, is this something that is my value, or is this something that my society, my culture, my family put and conditioned me into having? Because a lot of the values that I used to have are not the same that I have now. The values that I was able to actually understand that were part of my family and not mine, now I was able to change. But until I questioned that, I wasn't able to do that. So for example, like my family like, comes from the Jewish tradition, and there's a lot of values that I had when I was a kid that once I was able to start questioning, now it's very different what I'm doing. But also, one step above that is once you know what your values are, your actual values, not your culture's, your family's values, the biggest thing is, are you actually living accordingly to that? Do your actions speak for your values and for what you stand for? And it's perfectly okay that it's not. The more that we can, the best, but it's not always easy. It's not always the convenient thing. So always being kind with ourselves. So if I'm kind with myself, I can continue step by step by step by step to create the change that I want. I won't be able to change everything like that. Sometimes you can, but it's easier to actually go step by step into creating the life that we want. So when we are trying to change, how do we create that change? And I always say step by step, because we have been habituated and we have this pattern that we have created in our lives. And those patterns are super strong. And for most of us, have been there for what, 20, 30, 40 years, however long we have been living, they have been there. So it's not as easy as saying, I'm just going to do this and I'm going to change. There's things that we are ready to change from one moment to the next, but there are things that we need to understand that it's going to take time. So actually having the discipline, having the patience to work with that which I want to change is what is going to help me to stick with it. So there's something that I learned actually when I was studying neuroscience that a lot of people that I didn't know before, and I think that a lot of people still don't know. A lot of people think that to change a habit, it takes around 20, 21 days, 30 days. That is only for some people. We actually have some people that can create the change at 20 days, and some people that it takes up to 68 days. So if you have ever tried to actually do anything differently, like to change a habit, and you did it for a month, and it didn't stick, it's because you're not one of the persons that change with 30 days. You need at least 68 days. So every time that I'm working with my clients, I tell them everything that we're trying to do for 68 days. If you're the person that actually creates the change in 20, awesome. Then the other 48 are going to be easy. But if you're not, if you only do it for 21 days, you're not going to create the new. So making sure that as we start to create the new, that we actually understand that that takes time. So how are we going to make sure that we stick with it? A lot of times, some people are very good at keeping themselves accountable. A lot of times it's this. It's actually being part of a group, being part of a collective that everybody knows that we're trying to do something and everybody can keep us accountable. So, like, if we have a coach, for example, then the coach keeps us accountable. If not, how are you making sure that you're keeping yourself accountable for something? So if I'm trying to actually create something new, I tell someone in my family or a friend, and I ask them to check in with me to make sure that I am sticking with it. Because also there is something about that, it's a small pressure of someone else knowing that you're supposed to do something. Like if nobody knows that you want to change something, nothing is going to change. That's okay, nobody knew. But if someone knows that you're going to make that change, most likely you're going to stick to it because there is that pressure there. It's the same as if you have a teacher, like it's that pressure of having someone there knowing. And I find it that when it's accountability, it's a very positive one. It's not a negative one. So when we understand and we have our values, when we understand a little bit the world of our feelings, where are we trying to go? So when we take this time now to understand that the world, once this situation ends, it's not going back to what it was. I don't know how it's going to look. I believe that it will depend on us, how it's going to look as a collective, but it's not going to be the same. So what better time to actually reinvent ourselves and how we do things? So when I understand, okay, I have whatever amount of time is 2 more weeks, 5 more weeks, 3 more months, I have no idea how long this is going to be. What would my life look like if money and time wasn't in the way? If money and time wasn't in your way, what does your life look like? And there is something, and I remember when I did this exercise with one of my teachers, and he was telling me everybody's just going to think going to the beach, going to travel and stuff like that. That doesn't last that long. Because he told me, work, now we have a completely different relationship than what work is supposed to be. Work is supposed to be the way that we are showing the world who we are. It's the way that we engage with the world. It's the way that everybody else understands what my gifts are and what am I bringing to the table. And my work is doing the talk. I don't need to talk because everybody's seeing what I'm doing. So we have that innate need to actually do that. So a lot of times I would tell people, if this is easier, where would you volunteer? Like if you would actually have the time and the money to do any kind of work, what would you be doing? And for some people, that is a better question because it's super hard to say, what am I going to do with my life? Like, if money and time wasn't a problem, what am I going to do? So making sure that I understand, like, I'm still going to do something. What is that one thing that I want to do? How am I creating that? Again, it doesn't need to happen. When I am not attached to the actual destination, then everything is easier. I can be more open because life will keep on changing. Like, how many of us thought that this was going to happen? And how many of us have been preparing for the coronavirus and staying at home and working online? Like, not many of us. So we don't understand all of the curves that life is going to send our way. But what we can understand is, how can I stay connected? How can I be in the flow with life, with what life is bringing to me? So when I can do that, I can understand a little bit more how to align the path into my vision of the future, into what I want to bring into the world. And one of the biggest things that I find that prevents a lot of us from actually living the life that we want and even being open from doing that is that we care too much about what other people think. So, who cares about what other people think? Yes, yes. Why? Why do we care about what other people think? I understand why. We've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to understand that other people have expectation of us and want us to live in a certain way. But one of the biggest things that I have found is that most of the time, that which we think that people are saying about us is not even real. It's what we think that people are saying about us. Like, most of the things that prevent us from doing things that are what other people think is in our heads. It's not what other people think. Most times, I tell people a lot of times in my movement or yoga classes, if you're thinking that the person next to you is judging you and thinking of you, they are thinking that you're thinking about them. They are too busy being worried about you to actually judge you. So most of us are living as if everybody's judging us, and we need to show this like perfect person. I need to show to the world this perfect Brian, whatever that is for other people. And first, that's going to be impossible because like there's so many people around. Being, there's no way that I can know what it is. People don't tell me that. That's all in my head. And if people tell me, then who cares? Like, who cares if people tell me this is the way that you're supposed to be? They don't know me. They don't know what I want. They don't know what I've been through. So, can I stay my course even when other people might be judging me? Because there's one thing that I find super interesting. Everybody's unique, everybody's their own, but somehow we're all trying to fit in the same place. We're all trying to do the same thing. If I try to actually do what other people are expecting of me, or that I think that they are expecting of me, I'm not going to live my life. I'm going to be doing someone else's vision of life. So I need to actually be truthful to myself and to stick with what I want. And there is a saying in Spanish in Argentina that is hard to translate. But basically, if I translate it, the closest thing would be outsiders or other people are made out of sticks. And basically, it means that people outside of me, they don't matter. It's not that I don't care about people, it's that I don't allow other people's projections of who I'm supposed to be to make me change. I'm changing myself in the way that I want. I allow myself to live the way that I want. And if people agree with that, awesome. And if they don't, that's their own thing. I'm not here to please them. I am here to live my life. So if we are living our lives pleasing others all of the time, then we are not going to be living our lives mostly. This doesn't mean that if you're a parent, not being there for your kids and not doing those things, there are certain things in life that we need to work with, but not allowing all of the time what those outside voices, whether they are real or in our heads, are saying to make me change. So if I understand that I am the one in charge, then I can start making changes. If I am not in charge, then I cannot make changes because other people are running me. But if I take ownership, if I take responsibility, if I actually believe I am in command, then that is the foundation to make the changes. And those changes come from within. Those changes don't come from here. This needs to learn from this. When I am in here, when I allow myself to be run by my body, I am in the present, I am in the flow, I am with what I want to do in my life. When I am in my head, I'm going to be stuck in the past, I'm going to be projecting into the future, I'm going to be living in all of these parallel and hypothetical scenarios that are not real. So if I get stuck all of the time, whether it is on the past, on the future, on these hypothetical scenarios, I am never here. And the only thing that exists is now, and now, and now, and now. Each moment, when I'm in the moment, that means that the moment before is gone. So as I'm talking, each thing that I'm saying, it's already gone. It's in the past. So when I was living in the retreat center, it was much easier to understand how to live like that, because I didn't have to do a lot of things that actually required me to actually think a lot ahead or behind. When we are living life here, we need to think about things. We need to think about the future. We need to think about what's coming, because we need to prepare ourselves. When I was, which I have been a few times in my life, on the last few dollars in my pocket, I didn't mind. I didn't have anyone to take care of. I didn't have any responsibilities, and I was okay. I was super in the moment, which meant I was okay. All of my friends were like, "Why are you not worried or freaking out?" And I was like, "I'm okay. Like, I am here." When I talked one day to my teacher about this, and he said, "Learn how to be present, but don't be stupid." This, especially on the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, there's a lot of teachings about dying, about death and dying, and about understanding my relationship with that. The more that I practiced, the more that I understood that relationship. And one of the things is that we don't know when we're going to die. And this is, my teacher told me, this is not about negativity. This is about reality and about actually appreciating what we have. This is so precious, what we have. Whatever the circumstances are, The fact that we are alive and we here on this call, if we are looking at this, we are privileged. Whatever our circumstances are, better or worse, we are privileged. So being grateful for the precious life that we have, with the knowledge that I don't know when my last moment is going to be. And when I understand that I don't know when my last moment will be, that is the fire for my living, for making the most of my life, because I know that I don't know when the last moment is going to be. So what am I waiting for? What are you waiting for in your life? He said, we were working on these teachings one day, and he said, there's two main questions that are super important to create change. One is, if not you, who? So if not you, who is going to do that? Whatever that is. And that is for small things at work, like on the street. If you find that there's a piece of paper on the street, on the floor, who's going to pick it up? If not you, who? And if not now, when? When I don't know when my last moment will be, what am I waiting for to create the change? And at the beginning, when I heard these two questions from my teacher, I thought, this is actually all about understanding the present moment now. It's like, okay, now I need to go and I need to grab life, and actually do everything. And then with time I understood it's not exactly like that. Yes, that's an aspect, but also it's about understanding not everything is about me, and not everything I need to do. So if not me, who? Perhaps it's someone else. I don't need to do everything. Perhaps there's someone else that does that, and I can tell them, hey, that piece of paper needs to get picked up, or that work or that task needs to get done. And it's not me the one that is going to do it. It's them that are going to do it. But someone needs to do it. If I just leave it there, it might not get done. So someone needs to actually know that that's for them. So I need to be able to communicate that. And the same for when. So if not now, when? I can say, now I'm in lockdown. I'm not going to do 300 online courses. I'm not going to learn 5 languages. I'm not going to do all of that, even though I might have the time. Because now perhaps the time is to do something else. Perhaps the time is just to be at home, to cook, to watch some TV, whatever that is. And living for later, that are things that I want to do. But one of the key aspects, if I leave something for later, is when. I actually put on my calendar stuff for, I don't know, like I put like 2 months, and then I see if in 2 months I want to do it or I keep on moving it. But I put a deadline to things, because if I don't put a deadline, things don't get done. If I don't put something on my calendar, everything else that has priority that is going to come up is going to take priority over that. So I need to understand that I want to be able to keep myself accountable, and I need that pressure of a deadline. When I understand that when I have a deadline, and I know this a lot from my years at school, I would study. If I would study only the night before of the exam, not before. And I know that that's not everyone, but a lot of people are like that. When we got that deadline, we're going to actually try to do everything. And the thing with deadlines is that it creates more energy. it brings more energy into the space, and that energy is available. And that energy transforms a lot of times into focus, into discipline, and into concentration. So when I can understand that relationship of putting deadlines to things without getting to the stress, but getting to that available energy, then I'm in the flow. When that energy turns into stress, then I have to actually, for next time, learn, okay, this is too much for me. I need to give myself more time, or not that many things. I need to find the balance there of a big deadline that is going to bring me some of that energy to be available with not going overboard so I get stressed. So when I understand, okay, this is the time that I want to actually make a change, then I start actually putting it into paper. These are the things that I stand for. These are my values. This is my vision. This is what I would like to do if time and money wasn't an issue. How do I get there from where I am now? I have found that the biggest way for me is by actually engaging in different disciplines like movement, journaling, and repetition. So I do a lot of change through changing my body. So I do a lot of Tibetan yoga, and this can be any discipline. It can even be running. What my body thinks that I can do, actually what my head thinks that I can do, is not what my body can actually do. My body can actually do more than what my head is telling. So I always use physical practice that moves energy before I sit down to create the change here. Because what I'm doing is that I am showing my mind what it's like to actually be more malleable, more open, more receptive to the new. The mind has, and this is from neuroscience, we call this neuroplasticity. The mind has a certain pathway for whatever it is that I'm thinking or doing. I have one pathway. How am I going to change that pathway into a new one? I need to start introducing something new. And with repetition, that is going to start being the new pathway. From the mind, super difficult to do that. It's going to take a lot of time. When I start introducing that change from the body, it's much easier. So I invite you to actually do things physically different. So if I grab a piece of paper and a pen, what I do is I'm going to change that to the other hand. And I'm going to try and write with that hand. Now, no one is going to understand that. I'm not even going to understand it. But what I'm doing is I am changing the pathway in my brain. If I do the same, like when I'm brushing my teeth, if I do it with the right hand, doing it with the left. So these are things that are super easy to incorporate, and the impact that they have is huge, because if I start creating new pathways in my brain, suddenly a lot of pathways starts to open up and start to actually be available, to be massaged, and to actually be more malleable. So making sure that I start with the small things enables me to do the bigger things. If I eat with the fork on the right hand and I cut with the left, changing that as well. Making sure that those things that we do every single day, or I hope that we all do every single day, eating and brushing our teeth, we can actually use that time to create change here. And the impact of that is huge. If we can do other things differently as well, I usually tell people when I'm working with them, and this was what I did, and I did this actually for quite a long time, and I don't expect people to do this. Go as slow as you can. Move as slow as you can. If you have the time now at home, go as slow as you can. If you need to cut food, if you're cooking, make sure that you do it as slow as possible. If you're walking from your room to the kitchen or to another part of your house, walk as slow as possible. When we move slowly, what we're doing is we're allowing our body to feel. We're allowing ourselves to process the experience. So the feeling world is going on a very, very different speed than the thought world. This goes way, way, way slower. So when I understand that I need to actually engage more with that world to create the change, I need to start slow. Because for me, in order to move on, what has been holding me back and what my conditions have been, I need to actually release whatever is stuck. So from an energetic standpoint, when I do a lot of my classes, I talk about this. I talk about energy blockages. All of what I haven't allowed myself to process in my lifetime is stuck as energy in my body. Everything that I didn't allow myself to experience. So if I allow myself to go and find those blockages and to release those blockages, then that which has been holding me back is not going to be there anymore. So now there's energy available for the new. So I do this a lot with my body. I go into my body and I move slowly. And as I move slowly, I start noticing, okay, there's a blockage here, there's a blockage there. How do I notice when there's a blockage? A few things. One is I start holding my breath. If my breath is not flowing naturally, I am contracting. There's a blockage there. So I need to understand that the breath is always going to show me that. The other thing is when something feels heavy. So, and I do this a lot in my classes. If I move the shoulders and I make circles with the shoulders, and if I do this for 1 minute, there's a lot of feelings that are going to come up here. For a lot of people, that is going to be super tight and it's going to show a lot. So if that happens, that means that you're carrying blockages all of the time there. So if I do this and I'm not holding blockages in that area, I should be able to do this with no problem, and I wouldn't feel uncomfortable or anything during or even after. I wouldn't need to actually do this and escape that feeling. When I understand that, the more that I actually go to those blockages and release that, now that energy is available for what is coming. So when we work through how to create the new, I need to connect in. I need to connect with the feelings. I need to connect with my vision of the future, that vision that I want, that vision that I think at least that I want, with the present moment. And the present moment is going to catch up with that. That present moment, if the energy is starting to be available, the present moment is going to be able to get that. If the present moment is not there and I'm living in the past, then it's going to be much harder. So I need to understand that I want to be able to create that space. And that space, the easiest way for us is using our physical body, using our breath, using a little bit of our head, of course, but not allowing this to be in the way. So the more that I can do that, the more that it's going to be easy for me to go into the new. So one of the other aspects that I wanted to talk before opening this a little bit more for some questions is being kind to ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves. I believe that this is one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves. A lot of us are kind to other people, a lot of us are compassionate towards other people, but we don't do that for ourselves. So making sure that I am being kind with myself. When I am not doing something that I would like to be doing, being kind with myself that I didn't do that, I did the other thing. If I am not living the life that I want, being kind with myself and allowing myself to understand I am doing the best that I can where I am now with what I know. Because if I knew better, I would be doing something differently. So accepting where I am, to actually accept me. I am not perfect, but I am doing the best that I can. Just like the same, I believe, for everyone else, I do that with myself. I am not perfect, but I'm doing the best with what I know and how I know. And as I am being kind and I am not judging myself, I am also releasing the hold of that judgment, and I'm not sticking with that is in the past, because all of those things come from my past. Whenever I think that I'm not doing the right thing or the best thing, what is that coming from? Like, who says that? I know that it's in my mind, but who says that? Like, I use that question a lot in my mind whenever there's a judgment. Like, I ask myself, who says this? Where is that coming from? Because it doesn't matter. So if I understand that that is the way for me to get to that place, being compassionate, being open to the new energy and going to there, knowing that there is something, and I don't need to know exactly what does that look like, but there is something different, then I can go to that place. Okay, I think that I've been talking for quite a while, and I would love to actually hear or something, some questions, or someone sharing something to know if we are on the same frequency or if something that I said actually makes sense.
Thanks for that, Brian. That was super interesting. There was something that I was just wanting to ask, actually, when you were saying about why do we care what people think? I guess one of the things that I thought is that humans always crave sort of acceptance and a sense of belonging. So is that one of those things that you'd think that's just what we think we need kind of thing, or what society tells us we need, but we don't actually need it?
Yeah. So there is something that is interesting, because so when we're growing up, we actually need this. We need to fit in. Like between the age of, depending on the kid, but between the age of 4 and 8, when we start turning from the need to fit in into our immediate family to start fitting in with friends, and we start looking that outside, we live all of our, up until our, I would say, our early 20s with that, which is, I need to fit in. I need to find that place that I actually belong, that thrive, and trying to go outside and do that. The thing is that we got stuck there. We are no longer teenagers. We don't need that acceptance as much as we did back then. We still are social beings, and we still need to be part. But if I am not acting in accordance to who I want to be, just so that I can fit in with my group of friends. And my group of friends, the group of friends that I need. So this is not about leaving like my group of friends or anything. This is about me understanding that I needed to fit in to survive. At least in my head, I needed that when I was a kid and a teenager. Now I don't need that. So can I be with what I feel like I need to do and not caring about that? Because like we still have that group, like we still have that conditioning. So this is about that undoing and that understanding that yes, this has a hold on me, but how can I actually start releasing that? And a little bit is actually in for like I don't want to use any bad words, but who cares? Like who gives about what other people think? So it's just understanding that yes, it was a really necessary thing for me when I was growing up, but now it's not longer there. I don't need to please anyone now. Like I'm not going to die if someone doesn't like me. And if someone doesn't accept that I'm choosing to do that instead of that. Or if I'm going to start like eating vegan or paleo or whatever, if my family doesn't do that, like I'm still going to be okay. There might be some challenges, but it's about understanding that yes, that serves its purpose. Now it's no longer necessary. Yeah.
Interesting, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Cannot see the chat. Let me see. Yes, Amy. When you start actually doing that, you start actually finding the people that are in your same wavelength. Like the more that we start and then, like being different, we're going to find the people that actually start being in that same energy. This is like finding your tribe, finding your space. There is people that are going to come there. Like yes, it might be a little bit different. Oops, what happened? Okay. Like it might be a little bit different and a little bit more challenging sometimes, but do I want to get stuck into not changing just because I'm going to lose my group of friends? Like, and it's okay not to want to lose my group of friends. I'm not saying like again, change your entire life, move countries like I did, and go to a Buddhist temple and live there for a few years. Like that's not for everyone. What is for everyone is to be able to actually be true to ourselves and to be able to live the life that we want according to that. And this is such an amazing opportunity because we have the time to rethink how we're doing things. Like I know that, like I was talking earlier with my brother, and even though his kids are driving him nuts, he is loving it. He's loving that he's actually all the time at home and being able to stay there and being able to actually have all of these interruptions because now he's able to actually be at home with his kids. So even though things are challenging, I don't know what things are going to look like afterwards. Like I don't know if I'm going to have to continue doing things online or if I'm going to go back to doing gatherings and events in person, or like is money still going to exist? Like I don't know what's going to happen, but there's a lot that can be said there. Yes, fear is such a big component on not doing things. I mean, like it's the thing with fear is that fear is irrational. And the biggest thing that I know how to deal with fear is understanding that fear is just a thought about a feeling. Can I feel the fear? because fear doesn't exist. Fear is just in my head. This is why, for me, it's super important to understand the world of feelings. If I understand the world of feelings, fear doesn't exist. Because fear only exists because I have reinforced the idea of fear, and I have never actually experienced it. And yes, we experience part of it, but a lot of times we don't go fully into it. If I understand, like, when I am starting to get fearful of something, where in my body is that fear? Is it in my chest? Is it in my belly? Like, where is it? Then I can understand, actually, that's not fear. That's just a feeling in my body. I have been connecting the word and the meaning of fear with that experience. But if I actually stay with that and I say, like, oh, that feeling is here. Can I feel it? Can I stay with it? Can I breathe into it? Then that's not longer fear. Then I can actually go past it. It's the same, like, I used to talk with some people about public speaking, and the same feeling that some people were having before going to talk, I would tell them, like, that's not anxiety. That is excitement. It's almost the same kind of feeling. It's in the same, for most people, it's in the same part of the body. But changing the attachment, changing that little word can do a lot. So the more that I'm open to actually saying, like, okay, let's stay out of here for a moment and let's go into here. Because this is the condition. This is what is actually happening here. So if I can stay with that feeling, I can work with what is in this moment, and I can go past it into what is coming. But as long as we are experiencing that feeling as fear, then it's going to keep us like with that brake on our car. It's just like we're not going to go anywhere. It's just understanding, how do I work with that? I work with my body, with my feelings. Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Sharing? Amanda, fear is the one thing that has come up massively, though I'm trying not to let fear get in my way. So that things don't have to be perfect to be shown to the world. Yes, yeah, like that's huge, and I mean, this goes back again to us caring a lot about what other people might think of us. Like, who cares if start to do this and people think like, oh, he looks weird? And it's like, who cares? Like, as long as I stay with what I want to do, I don't mind. Like, and I'm okay with that. Like, if I'm, as you say, dancing, like, and if I'm talking, perhaps like half of you looking at this thought I just wasted my time, like hearing Brian, and I am perfectly okay with it. Like, I would prefer if everyone like enjoyed it and took something out of it, but I am not attached to that. I know that what I'm doing is my truth, and it's what I'm sharing, and it's the way that I'm experiencing this moment. The same with dancing. If I am dancing, I am experiencing, I am expressing me, and if people get it, they get it, and if people don't get it, they don't get it. So what I can do is I can actually do my bit, like, and it doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy. Like, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of discipline and patience, and there's a lot of, you know what? What's the worst thing that could happen if I dance and people don't like it? Am I going to die? Most likely not. But that is what this is telling me. This is telling me it's that fear, that rejection. Yes, this is going to tell me, like, if I do that and they don't like it, I'm going to die, so I better not do it. the more that I start to get out of here, from that fear, and getting more here into my truth, and be able to say, you know, I got this. This is my life. Like, what I'm doing is what I want to do. And I go and then I dance, or I do the work that I want to do. And I come here and I talk or do whatever it is that you're doing. Then it doesn't matter, because I gave it my all. As long as I'm giving it my all, that's all that matters. And if something wasn't the way that I wanted to do it, then I just look back and I'm like, okay, next time, what can be done differently? What is the thing that I can learn from that? So I don't get stuck in the past, but I review the past. I actually work with the past. Like, I have done a lot of work, and like one of the tools that I use a lot for it is family constellations. If any of you know anything about family constellations, it's a lot of work with the past, with not only my past, but with my entire family and all of my ancestors. When I actually do all of that work, it's not because I'm stuck in the past. It's because I understand that the past still has a hold on me. And unless I'm enlightened, I am still being held back by my past, whether that is my own or my family or my culture, whatever that is. So I need to understand that I always need to work. I always need to learn from the past and accept it, but I don't need to get stuck there. If I start noticing that I am spending too much time thinking about the past, I come back to the present. I use my breath, I use my body awareness, I move or do whatever it is that I need to do to be able to connect with the present. But there's huge, huge knowledge in the past. So I'm using that. So it's being in that connection of the past and the present and the future that is going to be there. How do I engage with that? That is what makes the difference.
That's awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
Brian. Does anybody else have any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you. That was really inspirational. And while you were talking, I was literally Googling you to see about working with you one-on-one, because I really found the whole thing was really inspirational. I don't want to go deep and probably in front of everyone and sharing my journey that I've been on, but what your talk tonight was really helpful for me.
Thank you. Yeah, just like message me afterwards and let's talk. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, well, if there's nothing else, like, I'm always available. Thank you, Amy, for bringing me into this space. I am hoping to getting a lot more work online as well. And I am putting together a lot of things. But I find that actually, and this is something that, Amy, you have this, is that new tribe, like getting people to connect with that with that space. That's awesome. So yeah, I encourage everyone to find a little bit of that. Sorry, just going to check the messages. Sarah, do you mean doing meditation now? I don't know if we're okay with time or not, but
We've only gone over by 21 minutes. It's all right. We're living in the present. I don't think anybody's got anywhere to go. But we could definitely schedule Brian in to do a little meditation before our class one Wednesday, couldn't we, Brian?
Yeah, yes. And as long as we're in lockdown and I don't have to be in other places and I don't have another class in that moment, I'm available.
I will be booking you in.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I'll end the recording now, but thanks so much, Brian. It was so good. and I've written down like 5 million notes. So I will post this recording up in the Essentialists Facebook group. So if there's anybody here that's not an Essentialist, I can email it to you as well. But yeah, that was so good. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you. And yeah, have a good night, everyone. And I'll see you sometime soon, and virtually at least.
Awesome. Cool. See you guys. Bye.